Here we go. Thank you.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. John Riggio, our architect, our pro tennis player, and author, joining us. How are you today?
Hi, Jill. I'm doing okay here. Thank you.
Well, I mean, you really shocked me last week, or was that 2 weeks ago we spoke, and I found out he's got his book out. Oh, my goodness. So give us a little overview as to who you are, what you're doing, and we're going to discuss more of the book and also find out where we could see you at some upcoming book signings and get to learn more about you and your architecture, your tennis, family life, and just an amazing whirlwind life of people you've known, met, and who you are. Awesome. Congrats again, John.
Thanks. Yes, my name is John Riggio. I usually talk about my architecture work. I have my architecture office, and but years ago I used to also play pro tennis. So I have a lot of stories about my pro tennis years. And today I'd like to talk about one thing that is really both for tennis and for architecture work. One of them was over the years was they had a tennis center. Now, to play tennis, and particularly pro tennis, we usually played in a tennis center when it was indoors. And sometimes the tennis center was also had outdoor courts too. But what happened is over the years of my playing, there was a lot of peer pressure over this thing with tennis stadiums, which is a problem. So what happened was the tennis stadium idea, as we got into really playing in a tennis stadium and having our own tennis stadium, was a few different issues. I think one issue was really the tennis stadium isn't really used every day. It just sits there vacant. And while I was playing in Manhattan, the idea of building the tennis stadium started to unfold. The grandstand that they had at Sutton East in Manhattan, they had to relocate it, and it ended up in Times Square, New York. That's the grandstand that's there now.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, they started to plan the whole stadium. They had the architects that built some stadiums over at the National Tennis Center in Flushing, New York.
Mm-hmm.
They had them make a whole set of plans, getting permits and everything like that. And as we developed the ideas of what we need in the stadium, it turns out the terminology of a stadium started to change. They wanted to call it more like a multi-use athletic center, because when we put in that we don't want to just use it occasionally, we're supposed to use it every day, the title of it as a stadium was sort of changing, because we wanted to have things like separate entrances, separate parking, having things like a locker room with bathroom, showers, areas for the sponsor, areas for friends of the players to have a place to watch, and of course having a grandstand. Then there was some basic features like having the tennis courts reusable every day, where the same thing where the seating is. And that would probably include like some kind of cover, like a rain cover of some kind that might be is retractable. I think with that, I always put my input into all those different things. One of them was also to have a heated court floor, because in the wintertime, the floor can get very cold. And then I think just the size of the top would always come out to 2 stories in height.
Okay.
So the idea of the stadium, when we came to the design of the stadium, was the stadium was really mostly open, still outdoor court, and then it was just left vacant. So the idea of the everyday playing came at the designers of the stadium wanted me to play outside the stadium in like the parking lot. So I would go all the way back. There would be like a big regression. I go all the way back to playing outside the stadium. And in theory, whenever the end of the tournaments would come up, I would play in the stadium. And I think that opened up a whole thing of making it where I don't play in the stadium. I would just play on an outdoor court, and there was no stands, no anything there. I think most importantly, with the tennis playing was also television. Almost everyone watches the tennis on television. It's the best place to watch the tennis on television. Most of the seating ideas and the viewing of the
Yeah.
court has to do with people who are really like the fan club of each player, sponsors, friends would come and watch.
Wow.
And there was always a small area for general admission also.
Wow.
But the idea of the tennis stadium wasn't really that good an idea. I think it was
Okay.
just peer pressure. There was just peer pressure, and I think over the years, as I would give my input to what kind of facility we need to play tennis, and what my sponsors would say, what people would come to visit would say, it would come out to the same idea.
Yeah.
In fact, the tennis center to play the pro tennis was really the best way to play. And it had all the different things with fans coming, sitting there, and crowds of people before and after the match.
Mm-hmm.
I think I described before also the different things about the security factors involved. There were some people trying to maybe attack the players, all kinds of different things over the years, even protests outside the tennis center, things like that. There were all different things going on. They sort of didn't like maybe just the fans getting too close. Also, they could try to harm the players too.
Wow.
So there were all kinds of different things like that. So the idea of the stadium, which a lot of people thought was they were really jealous of baseball in America, wasn't really that practical an idea. That's more of the tennis center that is almost exactly the same as a stadium was really more functional idea. Leaving a vacant stadium didn't make much sense.
Mm-hmm.
And this really became very clear when my sponsors really had them build a model of the stadium, had them make the drawings, and we really went through the program of what they were supposed to put in the stadium. And it came out to the same exact thing as the tennis center, just a little larger. And I thought at the time, and I always would add my input to just maybe just improve the tennis facility, going through different facilities as I earned them. The same thing always started to come up. I remember even one time I brought one of my girlfriends and her mother stopped over there to watch me play, and it's the same exact thing: off-street parking, double height,
Mm-hmm.
tennis building, separate entrances. Everyone, I think, any common person would could understand that whole thing, and so I think that was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So I think even if you're playing or a common person would could put that together, and so I think that was pretty good. I think the only problem we had with some things was sort of like petitioning to have those improvements wasn't really allowed too much. We really couldn't get too many things. At one point, I even was suggesting an idea of taking the main part of the building and maybe making a half story where
Okay.
we build a whole big front entrance, maybe at a corrugated metal structure, maybe like you see in like IKEA or something like that, and build like this half story, and that would give the whole thing a big look. And it's useful too. You could use the half story for basic uses. It was within the code. Obviously, there's particularly in Manhattan, the buildings around there were somewhat large.
Mm-hmm.
So I think things like that were happening the whole time. And but I think the thing with the stadium was really just the pure definition of the stadium wasn't really very luxurious, wasn't very practical, and so the how we were playing with the tennis center just for the pro player was really much better. And It had all the different features of the television, which was the most important, and things like that. So that is one thing that were I had noticed about the tennis center and how it was sort of developing. And I think the whole time, really, there was always that thing about this tennis stadium was really something that wasn't considered tennis. Some other players who were veteran players told me specifically that tennis wasn't a stadium sport, really a definition of
Wow.
just a stadium, something you just go play and leave. And that was one interesting thing about it. Really, as far as going into the stadium and playing, didn't make a difference to me. I could play anywhere as long as there was a court there. It didn't bother me. And I think that's another thing also was very interesting about the design of the tennis was they sort of like the tennis courts where it looks like the neighborhood court that you would go
Hmm.
to play to. Maybe it has maybe one or two extra courts next to them, and you would just play in the middle. And that was one idea that was coming through about the design of why the tennis centers look that way, is because they wanted to make it look like you were just playing at the ordinary tennis court in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
They didn't want to make it look strange that you were playing another sport, that it was something that you couldn't relate to. I think if you look at a baseball diamond, you see the diamond, it has two bleachers on each side with the backstop. It looks pretty much the same you would see on television.
Hmm.
But they didn't want to take the look away of the tennis playing. And that came through during these things of me earning my tennis bubbles, my tennis centers, was really these ideas was coming through to me, and they were telling me about them, and that's how we know about them. And I think even back then, the idea of having the heated
Yep.
court on the bottom
Hmm.
was an idea I always was saying from the very beginning. Having the bubble up an
Huh.
extra story, and things like that, and really the bubble was just for the winter play. This a lot of the playing was done outdoors. That's everyone's favorite because I think anyone who's a tennis player that's really good, there, it's sort of like going to the beach. You go to the beach and you're sweating, you're out in the sunshine, you're getting this dark tan too, and it's that's really part of the sport was really to play like that. It's so I think that's one thing about playing on the tennis courts is also like you're playing your own game on the court. It isn't the same as a team sport. Everyone, boys and girls, they all play team sports. They know about team sports. They play individual sports. So
Hmm.
if you like the idea of just playing your own game that you could achieve at it is really part of tennis. I remember there was one player who didn't like playing tennis. His father had gotten into it. His father was a professional player. I forget what sport he was in. And he came to my tennis court to get some lessons. And that's what he was saying. He didn't like playing all alone. It was a little boring to him. So even though he had pretty good athletic ability to play at that level, the pro level, he said he doesn't want to do it. He went and he changed over to baseball. He didn't want to play any more tennis. It was too much of like a lonely thing. But if you like tennis, you don't mind standing there on your own court, whether it's in a stadium or tennis center. I mean, that is what you like. So that is really good.
Hmm.
I think one interesting thing about the tennis playing it like playing sports, if you go to like a school gym locker and you think about a school gym locker, it smells, it's like damp. And
I hate that smell. Yeah.
very people you're uncomfortable. Everyone's uncomfortable going into something like that. But if you're the star and that's your own gym locker, all of a sudden it's completely different. I mean, that is your um, special room. That you don't feel self-conscious about it. It really is one interesting thing that's going on there. So that is one thing about playing tennis is that kind of thing, and it has to also do with that you are like playing the sport, that you're helps if you're good at the sport. I mean, anyone who plays different sports, everyone tries at different sports. If you're not good at a certain sport, of course, you got to start to move away from it.
Yeah.
You might try it, you might enjoy playing the sport, but if you're not too good at the sport, you might try another type of sport or something like that. So that's always part of the game. I think in sports, particularly in tennis, they always look for each player to excel at maybe two sports. So I think when I was young, I was also pretty good at gymnastics, and that was my other.
Really? I didn't know
Yes,
this.
yes.
You cease
They.
to amaze me. Go ahead.
So I was pretty good at the gymnastics. It was a very short-lived experience with the gymnastics, but I was able to go through it enough where they gave me the basic testing and things like that, and they could tell that I could excel to the top in gymnastics. So that was really my second sport. I think I was pretty good at some other sports, even maybe like basketball. I wasn't too bad at basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but I was a little short for basketball, not really able to go too high in
Mm-hmm.
basketball, and conform to it. So I even made the
Wow.
varsity basketball team just by chance, just with the coach and my friends, and it was a very interesting thing going on. But I didn't play. Um, I think I was too short for it and things like that. But otherwise, I did have pretty good ability to that, but not really compared to tennis. I think even gymnastics, I was able to score pretty high with the gymnastics, and they even pointed me out for this National Olympic program they had. I always wondered if I went for that, would it have to involve my family bringing me to California,
Mm-hmm.
or I wonder if that would have went better. I don't know. That doesn't really involve any money or pro sports. It's all amateur sports playing gymnastics. It was very interesting. And it was turned out that had some dangers involved too. I don't know if anyone knows, but anyone involved with anything Olympic, all of a sudden there's some dangers. A lot of kids they somehow end up getting injured. It was like a strange mystery of why that happens. I have no idea. And that was one interesting thing. At that time with the gymnasiums, I was already sponsored for tennis. It just seems like it didn't stop me. I don't know if the whole thing with the gymnastics came about was a strange test to see if I had gymnastics ability. I don't know.
Wow.
But that's what happened when I was younger. So those are the only two sports that I could really excel at the top. The other ones, I knew some professional baseball players really could not achieve at that type of level. But that is so tennis was really my number one sport, and the experience with that gymnastics somehow when I went through some tennis playing with the other pros, they always used to talk about their other athletic abilities of playing another sport for some reason. I have no idea why, but that was one thing that somehow they were interested in. And so now, years later, I've written the book, and I talk about the stadiums and things like that. I talk about the whole thing also with my gymnastics and some things about that. And also, just recently, I was doing some things with some book signings.
Yay. Tell us
Able
where,
to
where,
sign a few
when.
books, giving away, and I could show some pictures I have here,
Please.
here in the photograph.
Bring it on.
Okay, there it is.
Don't see it. There we go.
Okay. All right, so this here, I think recently, this is a video. If you could see here on the right side, this is my education lessons I give on the weekend. And you see, I have a whole bunch of people running the court. I teach them all kinds of different tennis drills on how to learn, test their athletic ability, and things like that. And this is the video. I have them running on two courts over here.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is a book signing. This is one of the book signings I had here, and I have someone here that was interested in my book and signed it there. So that's pretty good. So that's something that I've been working on. And so let's see. I have some other pictures.
Sure.
Okay, so this is really also my morning training. I have a lot of people. There's a rotation of people who come out. They're all over 18. and they all want to start learning how to play tennis. So I start with the very basic instruction, and I show here this is more drills of how to run around the court and things like that. So I do all the basic things, and all these are coming out of my experience when I was taught how to play tennis over the years. Different instructors, different tennis pros, and I'm taking years of experience and I'm putting it there, and also the different things that I discovered on my own on how to play. And I go through usually teaching them one uh, way of hitting the ball each lesson. So I give them the stretches, taught them how to hold the racket, teach them how to swing the racket, just some basic things about the tennis court. And I usually teach them how to do one new hit on the ball. And then I give them like a little training session. And then we usually would play some games of tennis after that. So this is what's been going on there. And this is the different players here. I have some of them set up here playing some tennis matches
Mm-hmm.
and playing on the courts. And here play some doubles when we have too many players to fill up the courts. We have to double up. So we just play the doubles matches on some of these. And there I am. This is some pictures of myself.
Yay.
And this is here. Let's see what we have. And that's just a box of my books that I have here. And a picture of me just showing the book.
Love it. Oh,
And this is the book standing up. So this is the hardcover that is could just stand on the table there. And it works pretty good. This is a few months ago in the cold winter.
you don't have your own court in your backyard? Come on. Oh, what car is that? Back up. What is that?
Yeah, this was just my car when I was in college.
Aw.
I had this car.
What type of car is that?
Oh, that was just a Chrysler Laser.
Okay, cool.
Okay, let me stop the sharing on that. So yeah, those are some pictures I had to put together. I was doing a lot of research about my tennis past, looking at some pictures I had and some addresses I remembered of the tennis centers and things like that. Years ago, I didn't write anything down. I had nothing in writing. I had a few different, maybe like business cards or something like that when I was younger. I kept very few things, but I had to memorize everything. So it took me a while to really go through everything and then compile some pictures of all the different things that happened over the years. So that is what was going on. As far as like the stadium I talked about earlier in the show, I tried to maybe locate the drawings for it. Maybe the model is somewhere. I'll have to see if I can get a photograph of that whole thing. But yeah, that was very interesting, and I think the whole story with the tennis center and the tennis stadium was really a lot of different types of peer pressure going on and things like that. And I thought it was very interesting that whenever we went through the design always came right back to the same tennis
Mm-hmm.
center that we started off with, and I could tell the reason why of how we were playing, and I always thought of that the other type of facility was really maybe wasn't for that tennis sport. It was just something I think people were getting into. I think another thought was really tennis was really based off of making money, and I think going through the business idea was whether playing in the stadium was good for the tennis business. I think just in my observation, obviously playing on television was the number one best way to do it. And the whole idea of the more of like a spectator, people coming out in person to see this sport in masses. I think it's just like a business factor involved. I guess whoever owns the sport business has to do with, their discussions of what they want to do. But I think some of it was really peer pressure at that point with the particular facility of trying to play in there. And that's one thing that I had really was thinking about and remembering from years ago of what was happening. And I thought it was very interesting. That whole story with really of the stadium having a certain function
Yeah.
and then making it more realistic, making it more useful is sort of then would no longer have a title of stadium. It's really more like tennis center, things like that. I think one thing about tennis center also, the tennis center of playing pro tennis and I think a larger set of tennis bubbles and facilities. A lot of time that's for people who you would go and rent a court for an hour. Sometimes they have a lot of educational, group educational, things like that. That is sort of more of an expansion of like a tennis center. It isn't necessarily just the tennis center. The tennis center would probably just comprise of one set of courts and all those different things around it, the parking, the entrance, grandstands is really just around that one set of courts. The multiple set of courts, indoor courts, outdoor courts, sets of indoor buildings, bubbles, things like that. I remember like the Westbury courts they had a whole series of one was a bubble, one was a metal structure. They had clay courts, hard courts. They had a whole variety of things, and that was really part of like more like a complex of playing tennis. But really, the tennis center was more like centralized on just one set of courts. That was one interesting thing about what I'm talking about. And so I think that was very interesting. And it took a while for me to go over and remember everything and remember all the different factors involved with the tennis courts.
Well, let me ask you now. I mean, as an architect, as a builder, you live in Jersey. What are the tennis courts you go to now? And do you still come to the one in Queens?
Yeah, there's one in Staten Island that has a bubble. The one out here, most people like to play outdoor. They have some indoor structures that's playing involved. And then, so I think most of the time we're just playing outdoors. They had one bubble over here that blew away in the storm, but they never replaced it. That was on one of the colleges over here. And but most of the time we're just playing on the outdoor courts, and that's about it.
My goodness. Well, what's next in store for you? Where are we going to find you next?
Oh yeah. Well, I think the whole thing with my book is really developing very good. I'm working on it and doing all kinds of interesting things like book opening meetings and things like that. And that's been developing very nicely.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And where can we find a copy of the book?
You can just go on Amazon, and right now it's also available on all the different internet sellers like Barnes and Noble, Errant. You get it on Goodreads, so you can get it on a whole bunch of different stores online are available to buy that. You could buy that in a ebook on Kindle, or you can get it on the Nook, and you could also get paperback. And the hardcover is available on Amazon.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you, my friend, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Thanks so much for sharing. And again, congrats on this latest addition to your success. Congrats. Pick up a copy of the book, everyone. Thank you again. And we always love you here, John. You're one of our best. Seriously, you really are. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jill. It's good talking to you.
You too, Mr. Riggio. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her?
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge?
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! It's now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend?
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.